3 young men against 1,000,000. This is the impossible math of the Old Testament's most courageous story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 Hebrew foreigners, stood amid a prostrate crowd before a gigantic golden statue. The order was simple: bow down or burn. There was no negotiation, no time to think, no escape. And King Nebuchadnezzar, to ensure that no one survived disobedience, ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal, so hot that the very soldiers who threw the 3 condemned men died instantly from the heat. But the 3 who were thrown into the fire, they walked out calmly, without a singed hair, without the smell of smoke, completely unharmed. The executioners died, the condemned lived. This is the paradox that defies all logic and reveals a God who operates beyond natural laws. But what makes this story even more intriguing is what Nebuchadnezzar saw when he looked into the furnace. He had ordered 3 men thrown in bound, but he saw 4, walking loose amid the flames. And the 4th, in his own words, resembled the Son of God. Who was this mysterious figure? The pre-incarnate Christ? A powerful angel? Theological debate continues, but the essential point is crystal clear. They were not alone in their ordeal. And if you've ever felt the crushing pressure of having to compromise your values to survive, if you've ever had to choose between your career and your convictions, if you've ever been thrown into the furnace simply for doing what was right, then this story isn't just an ancient relic, it's your survival manual. Because we all face furnaces, maybe not literal ones, with impossible heat and temperature, but just as real. That boss who demands you lie on your report, that environment that ridicules your faith, that social pressure to abandon principles, that financial opportunity that demands only a small moral compromise. And in the moment of pressure, when everyone around you is bowing down, you need to know how these 3 young men did what they did. Along this journey, you will discover the principles they applied, understand the difference between God delivering you from the furnace versus in the furnace, and have the answer to the crucial question: when your furnace arrives, will you bow or will you trust? The story begins in 605 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar II invaded Jerusalem. The city was conquered, the temple plundered, and the intellectual elite deported to Babylon. Among the captured young, men were 4 who stood out: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The Babylonian Empire had a clear strategy of assimilation. First, they changed the names of these young Hebrews. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azariah became Abednego. This wasn't just an administrative move, it was an attack on their identity. Their Hebrew names honored the God of Israel, but the new names connected them to the pagan gods of Babylon. It was a systematic attempt to erase who they were and rebuild them as loyal Babylonians. The re-education program lasted 3 intensive years. They studied the Chaldean language, Babylonian literature steeped in pagan mythology, advanced sciences, astronomy bordering on astrology, and even magical arts considered elite knowledge. The goal was to transform devout Hebrews into sophisticated Babylonians who would serve the empire without question. But these 4 had something different, a conviction formed in a real relationship with God. The first test came with food from the royal table, which was sacrificed to idols before being served. Daniel negotiated a vegetarian diet for 10 days. If they were less healthy, they would return to the king's diet. The result? After 10 days, the 4 were visibly healthier than all the other young men. The alternative diet was approved. At the end of the 3 years, Nebuchadnezzar personally examined all the graduates. The verdict was stunning. These 4 Hebrews were found 10 times wiser than all the magicians and enchanters in the empire. 10 times. It was the result of minds that refused to compromise, hearts that remained faithful, and a God who honors those who honor him. They entered royal service with positions of significant influence. They had passed the first test, but the next would literally be a matter of life or death, with no possibility of negotiation. Years later, Nebuchadnezzar decided to build a monument that would consolidate his power. He ordered a colossal statue erected on the plain of Dura, 27 meters tall, completely covered in gold. The cost was astronomical, and the purpose clear: forced religious unification. He summoned all the officials of the empire without exception: satraps, prefects, governors, judges, treasurers, magistrates, all who held office in the 127 provinces. Failure to appear constituted treason. The order was brutal: At the sound of the instruments, everyone was to prostrate themselves and worship the statue. Refusal would result in instant execution in the fiery furnace that stood right there, smoking as a terrifying reminder. The trap was perfect. No one could plead ignorance, no one could discreetly refuse, and the consequence was clear and visible. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were there. The dilemma was deadly in its simplicity. Worshipping the idol would mean betraying God. Refusing meant certain and public death. There was no middle ground, no time to consult mentors. The decision had to be immediate. They could have rationalized it in many ways. It was just a physical gesture, God knows the heart. They needed to survive to serve later. But these excuses wouldn't work. Public testimony has public consequences. Partial obedience is complete disobedience. Compromise in one situation destroys credibility in all future ones. Daniel doesn't appear in this narrative, absent for unknown reasons. The important point is that the three had to decide for themselves. Their conviction couldn't depend on a mentor being always present. You can't outsource your integrity. And then the instruments sounded. Like a synchronized wave, thousands prostrated themselves before the golden statue. But three figures remained standing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't consult each other. There wasn't time. But all three, independently, made the same choice. The same conviction, the same action, the fruit of the same spiritual formation. They chose to burn rather than bow down. And if you're enjoying this story of unwavering courage, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more transformative biblical stories and turn on notifications. It didn't take long for someone to notice. Some envious Chaldeans saw their opportunity. It wasn't religious zeal that motivated them. It was envy of the positions the three Hebrews held. The denunciation was strategic. There are some Jewish men whom you appointed over the affairs of the province who paid no attention to you, O king. They portrayed it as personal disrespect, mixing religious accusation with political challenge, and the evidence was irrefutable. They were standing when everyone bowed. Here's a necessary lesson. Consistent integrity breeds inevitable envy. Success with principles is uncomfortable. Attacks against you will often come disguised as zeal for the truth, when they are merely masked envy. Nebuchadnezzar was furious. His ego had been publicly wounded. He had the three brought in by force, probably expecting them to apologize and prostrate themselves immediately. But when they arrived, there was no fear on their faces. He gave them one last chance, offering a second opportunity. If you are ready to fall down and worship the image I have made, fine. But if you do not worship, you will be thrown into the blazing furnace. And then came the arrogant challenge. And who is the God that can deliver you out of my hands? It was a declaration of absolute power. Nebuchadnezzar had conquered nations, destroyed temples, defeated armies. He was, in his mind, more powerful than any god. But he was about to discover how wrong he was. The response of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is one of the most powerful statements of faith in the entire Bible. O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. No hesitation, no delay. The decision had already been made. Then came three progressive theological affirmations. First, behold, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, a categorical declaration of divine power. They did not doubt for a second that God was capable. Second, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Confidence not only in their ability, but in royal intervention. They expected deliverance. They believed in it. But then came the phrase that elevates everything to the supreme level. And if not, three words that represent the pinnacle of mature faith. It's not doubt. It's surrender to divine sovereignty. They believe God can deliver. They hope God will deliver. But if God chooses not to deliver, then let it be absolutely clear. Be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. Their obedience wasn't contingent on a favorable outcome. They weren't bargaining with God. They were asserting absolute conviction regardless of consequences, doing the right thing no matter what, obeying God not because he guarantees success, but because he is God and deserves obedience even when we don't understand his ways. This is a faith that doesn't negotiate, that doesn't make demands, that doesn't impose conditions. Nebuchadnezzar's response revealed uncontrolled rage. His face contorted, his composure evaporated, and then he gave an order that betrayed sadism. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. 7 times hotter. Why? Any fire kills, but he wanted an extreme example, a death so obviously unsurvivable that no one would ever dare defy him again. The number 7 signified completeness, absolute and guaranteed death. Ironically, this excessive order would create a more visible miracle. The preparations were swift and brutal. Bound with ropes, fully clothed, they were handed over to the empire's bravest soldiers. But when these warriors approached the furnace to throw the condemned into it, the increased heat was lethal. The executioners died instantly, burned, before completing their task. Cruel irony, the executioners died, but the condemned would live. Nebuchadnezzar, watching from a safe distance, expected to see 3 bodies disintegrating, but suddenly he rose hastily, distraught. He asked his advisors, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound into the fire?" The answer was obvious. "Yes, Your Majesty." But then he said something impossible. "But I see 4 men loose walking around in the fire, unharmed, and the 4th looks like the Son of God." 4 men, not 3, loose, not bound, walking calmly, not shouting, and the 4th looked divine. Who was this mysterious 4th man? Most conservative theologians interpret it as a theophany, an appearance of the pre-incarnate Christ. Jesus before Bethlehem, manifesting himself in the Old Testament to be with his faithful in the tribulation. Others argue that it could have been a powerful angel. The text doesn't specify definitively, but the central point is undeniable. They were not alone. God didn't deliver them from the furnace, he delivered them in the furnace. Sometimes the miracle isn't avoiding tribulation, but surviving it with divine presence. God's presence is more valuable than the absence of problems. Nebuchadnezzar approached the mouth of the furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come!" It was an invitation, almost a plea. Note the phrase, "servants of the Most High God." The king who had arrogantly asked what God could deliver them now publicly acknowledged the supremacy of the God of Israel. And they came out. Officials surrounded them to inspect the impossible. They touched their hair. Not a single strand was singed. They examined their clothes. No burns. And the most striking detail, there was not even a smell of fire on them. Medical impossibility becoming theological testimony. But there's a subtle yet profound detail. The fire did burn something, the ropes that bound them. They were thrown tied, but Nebuchadnezzar saw them loose. The only things the fire consumed were precisely those that bound them. Herein lies one of the most beautiful lessons. Tribulation, when faced with God, burns only what binds you. The fire of trial doesn't destroy you, it purifies you. It removes what is non-essential, eliminates what limits you, frees you from bondage. Nebuchadnezzar made a public declaration that completely reversed the situation. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Pagan king publicly praising the God of Israel before all the officials of the empire. He continued, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. An admission of supernatural intervention. And he praised the very disobedience that had enraged him. And they changed the king's word, not wanting to worship or serve any other god, but their own God. Nebuchadnezzar issued a new decree. Anyone who spoke against the God of the Hebrews would be torn to pieces. The reason? Because there is no other God who can deliver like this one, from persecution to protection in minutes. And the final verse, then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. They not only survived, they prospered. They were promoted, received public honor, and expanded authority, all because they refused to compromise. Here is the eternal principle. God exalts those who honor him. Losing for God is gaining with God. What seems like the end of a career for integrity becomes the beginning of divine advancement. Now, the 7 practical principles they applied. First, conviction before the crisis. They didn't make the decision when the instrument sounded. That decision had already been made years before, formed in small choices of obedience. When they refused the king's food, when they maintained prayer practices, when they chose to honor God in the little things, they were building unshakable conviction. You don't develop courage to face the furnace when you're right there. You develop it on ordinary days, in small acts of obedience that no one sees. The time to decide what you won't compromise is now. Define your red lines today. Second principle, integrity is non-negotiable. There's no such thing as just this once, no such thing as circumstances justify an exception. A small compromise inevitably leads to a major downfall. No one wakes up one day and decides to betray everything. It's a gradual process of small concessions. Until you no longer recognize yourself, identify your non-negotiables now. What will you absolutely not do, regardless of pressure or consequences? Define it clearly, and when temptation comes disguised as necessity, you'll already know the answer. Third principle, perhaps the most difficult. Obedience is independent of outcome. The what if not is a mark of mature faith. They believed that God could deliver. They hoped he would. But if he chose not to deliver, it wouldn't change anything. Because we serve God for who he is, not for what he does for us. The question you need to answer: would you obey God if you knew for sure you would suffer for it? If doing the right thing will cost you your job, your relationship, or your social acceptance? If the answer is no, you don't serve God, you use him. If the answer is yes, even if it costs everything, you understand the gospel. Fourth principle, God delivers in the furnace, not from the furnace. At least not always. They didn't avoid the tribulation. They were thrown into the fire, but they had divine presence within. Sometimes the miracle isn't avoiding the fire, but surviving it. God doesn't promise the absence of problems, he promises presence in the problems. Isaiah 43:2, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. Note, when you go through, not if. Tribulation is guaranteed, but divine presence is also guaranteed. Stop praying only for God to remove problems. Pray for him to sustain you within them. Fifth principle, fire burns only what binds you. The cords were consumed, the people unharmed. Tribulation doesn't destroy you when faced with God. It purifies you. It removes what is non-essential. The question, what is your current furnace burning? Pride? Excessive self-confidence? Dependence on human approval? What the fire is removing is what God is purifying. Sixth principle, public testimony has multiplying power. The integrity of 3 young men converted a king. The decree reached 127 provinces, millions of people. Its influence multiplied infinitely, because compromise destroys credibility. If they had worshipped the idol just this once, they would have lost moral authority. But because they remained faithful under deadly pressure, their testimony became irrefutable. The world watches not what you say you believe, but what you are willing to lose for your beliefs. Your integrity under pressure speaks louder than 1,000 sermons. Seventh principle, God exalts those who honor him. It's not a magic formula, but an eternal principle. 1 Samuel 2:30, those who honor me, I will honor. They emerged from the furnace and were promoted. Public honor followed humiliation. The pattern is consistent. Descend before ascending. Die before living. Lose before gaining. God's timing is his, but you can trust that losing for God is never truly losing. It's an investment in eternal reward. And subscribe to the channel now if you want more stories like this, and leave a like to support. Modern applications are crucial. There's the professional furnace, pressure to lie in reports, normalized bribery, compromising ethics for promotion, working on Sundays and abandoning congregation. The principle, a career isn't worth integrity. No promotion is worth betraying convictions. There's the academic furnace, a professor who ridicules faith, normalized cheating, work that goes against values. The principle, a diploma isn't worth conviction. There's the social furnace, friends pressuring you to take drugs, relationships demanding premarital sex, family wanting you to deny your faith, social media canceling you for beliefs. The principle, acceptance isn't worth authenticity. There's the financial furnace, a lucrative but illegal opportunity, normalized tax evasion, a partnership that demands moral commitment. The principle, wealth isn't worth righteousness. Now the hardest question, what happens when God doesn't deliver? Because it doesn't. Always end like it did for the 3 Hebrews. Stephen was stoned to death. James was beheaded. Countless martyrs were burned, and the flames consumed them. How can we reconcile? Hebrews 11 is crucial. Verses 33 to 35 describe those who stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. But then verses 35b to 38 describe another group. Others were tortured, stoned, sawn asunder, killed. 2 groups of believers. Same chapter, same faith, opposite results. Which God loved more? Neither. Which had more faith? Neither. Both are praised equally. The truth: God delivers some in the furnace, allowing survival. God delivers others through death, leading them to glory. Both are victories from an eternal perspective. Both glorify God. The difference lies in sovereign purposes that we often misunderstand. The 3 Hebrews survived because God had more work for them. Stephen died because his martyrdom would initiate the expansion of the gospel. Because Saul of Tarsus was watching, sometimes the blood of martyrs is the seed of a harvest. We don't know what our situation will be until we're in the situation. And this uncertainty isn't cruelty. It's an opportunity for genuine faith. Because if we knew that obedience always results in deliverance, it wouldn't be faith, it would be calculation. The ultimate "what if not" needs to be our declaration. What if God doesn't heal? Do you still trust? What if he doesn't open that door? Do you still obey? What if he doesn't bring a spouse? Do you still worship? What if he doesn't solve financial problems? Do you still tithe? What if he doesn't restore relationships? Do you still believe he is good? What if he doesn't change circumstances? Do you still declare he is Lord? This is mature faith, a faith that doesn't bargain, that doesn't set conditions. I do what's right, because it's right, no matter what. I worship God for who he is, not for what he does for me. I trust his character, even when I don't understand his ways. The legacy of these 3 extends far beyond their lifetimes. They transformed Nebuchadnezzar. 127 provinces heard about the God who delivers. They strengthened Daniel. They set a precedent. They inspired Christian martyrs in the early centuries as they faced Roman arenas. John Huss was burned in 1415, singing as flames consumed his body. William Tyndale in 1536. Their story served as a model for peaceful resistance throughout the centuries. And today, it is a model of professional integrity, an example of holy nonconformity, an inspiration to the persecuted in closed countries, proof that God liberates. So the inevitable conclusion: your furnace is coming. If it hasn't arrived yet, it will. This isn't pessimism, it's biblical realism. Jesus said, "In this world, you will have tribulation." Paul wrote, "All who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution." It's not if, it's when. It could be at work, at school, in your family, in your finances. It could be public or private. It could be sudden or gradual, but it will come. The question isn't if you will have a furnace. The question is, when it comes, will you be prepared? Preparation begins now. Decide your values before the pressure. List your non-negotiables. Form conviction in the little things. Cultivate a real relationship with God now. Study the Word voraciously, memorizing verses that will anchor your soul. When the furnace is roaring, you won't have the mental clarity to research what to do. But if the Word is already planted, the Spirit will bring to mind what you need. And here's the promise: God will be with you. It may be deliverance from the furnace, removing tribulation. Be thankful if so. But it will likely be deliverance in the furnace. You will go through the fire, but he will be there. The promise is not the absence of pain, but presence in the pain. 1 Corinthians 10:13. God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. The escape may not be avoiding, but it may be enduring. But it will be enough. And what doesn't kill you will strengthen you, and what binds you will be burned. The furnace doesn't last forever. It was minutes for the 3 Hebrews. Intense, yes, but temporary. Your furnace will be too. 2 Corinthians 4:17. Our light affliction, which is but for a moment, works for us an eternal weight of glory. Eternal. Perspective transforms temporal tribulation, but integrity lasts forever. Your choice to remain faithful echoes in eternity. It has immense consequences. People watching you don't even know about. Testimony being formed. Character reflecting Christ in ways impossible without pressure. So what is your current furnace? Where are you feeling pressure to compromise? Identify it. Be honest. Acknowledge it for what it is. And then, consciously, deliberately, declare, I will trust. And if not, if God doesn't deliver me the way I expect, I still will not bow down. I will still worship only the true God. I will still maintain integrity. Because in the end, what matters most is not whether you came out unscathed, but whether you went in faithfully. And the final hope, it's worth losing everything for God, because God loses no one. Mark 10:29 and 30. There is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or father or mother for my sake who will not receive 100-fold, whatever you lose. For him, you will recover multiplied. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not at the desired time, but certainly. All three risked everything and gained promotion. Joseph remained pure, was imprisoned, but became governor. David refused to kill Saul, continued to flee, but was established king. Jesus gave his life, descended to the tomb, but rose in glory. The pattern is consistent. Descend to ascend, die to live, lose to gain. Do you identify with the story of these three friends? Leave your experience in the comments, how God has sustained you. And if you haven't faced it yet, leave your declaration of faith. When my furnace comes, I choose to trust. Like this now, subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone who needs this word. Because somewhere, someone is in the furnace right now, needing to be reminded that they are not alone, that God sees, that there is a fourth man in the furnace. And always remember, when the music plays, when the order comes, when everyone bows, you have a choice. Bow or burn, commit or trust, deny or declare. Let your answer be unwavering, and if not, we still will not worship. This is the faith that transforms worlds. This is the courage that changes empires. This is the integrity that echoes into eternity. This is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and it can be your story too.